The scent of rosemary and warm yeast hung in the air, rich and deliberate. My bakery, Stone and Crumb, was finally open. I had spent 6 months obsessing over every detail, from the reclaimed walnut counter to the low vinyl jazz drifting through the speakers. It was a sanctuary of craft and quiet confidence, and at the center of it all sat the corner table, the best seat in the house. Pressed linen, polished glassware, a small brass placard that read, "Reserved for family." It was 8 p.m. The table was empty. My phone buzzed in the pocket of my apron. I pulled it out, expecting an apology. Maybe traffic on I-40, maybe a last-minute delay. Instead, Instagram refreshed. Ethan, my brother, had just posted a selfie. He was holding a plastic cup of beer, grinning wide, with my parents squeezed behind him, Mark and Susan smiling like proud spectators. The background wasn't traffic. It was the neon-washed interior of a generic sports bar in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. The caption read, "Real deals happening here. Big moves loading." I stared at the screen. The contrast was surgical. Here I was, standing in a room I had bled for, a space built with patience and precision, and there they were, celebrating under flickering lights and sticky floors. They weren't late, they weren't confused, they had made a choice. The realization didn't hit me with sadness, it landed like a lock snapping shut. My eyes stayed dry. Any baker knows excess moisture ruins a crust, and tonight demanded precision. I walked to the table, lifted the reserved sign, and snapped it clean in half. The sound was small, but it echoed like a gunshot. I scanned the room and noticed a young couple hovering near the door, hopeful, unsure. I waved them over. "This table's open," I said evenly. "Best view in the place." Their faces lit up as they sat. I pulled out my phone one last time. I didn't open Instagram. I opened my messages and typed a single sentence to my father. "The table is open to paying customers. Don't bother coming." Then I silenced the phone and went back to the kitchen. For the rest of the night, I didn't think about them. I thought about dough hydration, oven temperature, the look on someone's face when they take a bite of fresh pane rustica and realize it's perfect. I focused on the work. That was always the part my family never understood. They saw Stone and Crumb as a charming side project, something I did while Ethan was busy being a visionary. But this wasn't a hobby. This was 15 years of 4 a.m. alarms. It was burns on my forearms and flour in my lungs. It was skipping every family vacation to work double shifts at a commercial bakery so I could save every dollar. Ethan had never worked a double shift in his life. He was always brainstorming, always networking, always chasing the next concept. He was the golden boy with big ideas and an empty checking account. And I was the safety net. I paid for his website hosting when he forgot. I bought him groceries when his capital was tied up. I listened to his pitches for hours, nodding while my own dreams waited quietly. My parents enabled it all. They called him brilliant. They called me dependable. "Caleb is so steady," my mother liked to say, as if steadiness was a consolation prize. They never saw the fire it took to be steady. They never saw the discipline it took to save $60,000 on a baker's wage. They just saw a reserve they could access when Ethan's latest venture collapsed. But tonight, the reserve was gone. Tonight, I wasn't the backup plan. I was the main event, and they missed it. By midnight, the bakery was empty. Staff gone, lights dimmed. I locked the door and checked my phone. 21 missed calls, 17 messages, all from my father. I didn't read them. I just stood there in the quiet, feeling its weight. It wasn't lonely. It was clean. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I had given it to myself, and that's a dangerous thing to do for a scapegoat. The next morning, the bell over the door chimed. I didn't need to look up. The heavy, deliberate footsteps told me everything. My father, Mark, walked in like he owned the place. Business casual polo, khakis, the uniform he wore when he wanted authority without effort. He didn't look at the pastries, didn't notice the space. His eyes went straight to me, scanning for cracks. "Rough night?" he asked, leaning on the counter. "Saw the lights were on late." "I was working," I said, wiping down the espresso machine. "Something you should try sometime," he laughed dismissively. Always with the attitude. "Look, about last night. We didn't mean to miss the opening, but Ethan had a big opportunity. Some serious investors were at that bar. We had to support him. It was networking." "Networking at a sports bar during March Madness," I said flatly. "Efficient." "It was strategic," he snapped. Ethan is building something big, an app that's going to disrupt logistics, but to scale, he needs capital, real capital. He paused, waiting. I kept cleaning. Caleb, listen, he continued, lowering his voice. We've talked it over. Your bakery is doing well, but it's small compared to what Ethan is building. We think it's time you diversified. We need you to invest $60,000 in his company. I stopped. 60,000? It's basically a loan, he clarified, but think of it as an investment in the family. We supported you when you were just playing with flour. Now it's your turn. I looked at him and saw it clearly for the first time. Not confidence, fear. He wasn't asking, he was collecting. And suddenly it all made sense. It wasn't greed, it was gravity, the crab bucket reality. If one crab climbs out, the others drag it back down. My independence wasn't a success to him, it was a threat. Stone and Crumb proved Ethan wasn't special, that their golden child was just a shiny shell. To protect the myth, they needed me beneath them. They needed my money not just to save Ethan, but to stop me. No, I said. Excuse me? No, I repeated calmly. I'm not investing, I'm not lending. The bank is closed. His face hardened. The father mask slipped, revealing the bully underneath. You owe us, he said. We raised you. We tolerated this little bakery fantasy. Don't be selfish. I laughed, sharp and involuntary. Selfish is skipping your son's grand opening to drink beer with your favorite child. Selfish is asking for 60 grand the morning after you humiliated me. I'm done, Dad. Get out. He didn't move. He stood there, red-faced, sputtering like an engine refusing to turn over. You can't talk to me like that, he said. I'm your father, and I'm a part owner of this place. I stepped out from behind the counter, so we were face to face. And you're trespassing. Trespassing? He laughed, thin and shaky. This is a family business. We helped you get here. Helped? I reached into my apron and pulled out a small notebook, not a prop, a ledger. I flipped it open. Let's review the help. In 2016, I asked you to co-sign a business loan. You said it might interfere with Ethan's truck lease. In 2019, I needed help moving into my first commercial kitchen. You were busy helping Ethan move into his third failed startup office. In 2021, I asked to borrow $700 for a mixer. You told me to get a real job. I snapped the book shut. The only thing you contributed to this bakery was the motivation to never need you. Stop keeping score, he growled, stepping closer, trying to loom. It worked when I was 12. It didn't work now. I'm not keeping score, I said quietly. I'm checking receipts, and you're overdrawn. I took a breath. This was the moment I'd rehearsed for years and never believed I'd survive. Listen carefully, Mark. Access to my life isn't a birthright, it's a privilege, and access to my table requires payment. Not money, respect, support, decency. You stopped paying rent decades ago. You're evicted. He stared at me like the words were in a foreign language. The towering figure from my childhood collapsed into an angry, entitled old man in a polo shirt. You'll regret this, he hissed. When you fail, and you will fail without us, don't come crawling back. I won't, I said. Now leave before I call the police and have you removed like any other unruly customer. I walked to the door and held it open. The morning sun outside was harsh and unforgiving. He searched my face for one last hook and found nothing. I was a wall. He stormed out, cursing under his breath. I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and rested my forehead against the glass. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt lighter. The air felt cleaner, like something toxic had finally cleared. I had fired my father, and I knew it wasn't over. Men like Mark didn't retreat. They retaliated, and Ethan, cornered and desperate, would follow. 2 days later, the bakery was alive. Morning rush, suits grabbing espresso, students lingering over croissants. The rhythm was steady until 12:15 p.m. when the door opened and the room curdled. A man in a beige windbreaker stepped in, clipboard in hand. Health department, he said, flashing a badge. We received a complaint. The room fell silent. A woman froze mid-bite. The espresso machine hissed too loudly. Regarding what? I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. Rodent infestation, he said, voice carrying. Specifically rats in the food prep area. Chairs scraped. A couple stood up and left half-eaten pastries behind. Shame burned in my chest, but I swallowed it. "That's false," I said. "My kitchen is spotless. You're welcome to inspect it." He did. For 45 minutes, he searched everything. Traps empty, logs pristine, flour bins sealed. Behind the ovens, clean enough to eat from. My staff stood frozen. I stood with my arms crossed, watching him find nothing. Finally, he clicked his pen. "Looks like a false alarm. One of the cleanest kitchens I've seen this month." "Who called it in?" I asked. "Can't disclose that," he said, but the caller claimed to be a concerned relative who'd seen it personally. I walked him out, smiling tightly for the remaining customers. "All clear, folks. Routine inspection." The smile dropped the moment the door closed. This wasn't greed. This wasn't jealousy. This was war. They were willing to destroy my reputation, my livelihood, to force me back into submission. They wanted me desperate, broken, willing to sign anything. I went to the back office and pulled up the security footage. I rewound to the previous afternoon. There was Ethan's car idling across the street for nearly 20 minutes, watching, counting. My hands shook, not with fear, but with focused rage. You don't mess with a chef's kitchen. You don't weaponize hygiene ratings. That's a declaration of war. I picked up my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Filing a false report isn't a prank. It's a crime. I was done playing family. It was time to play prosecutor. The anger was still simmering when a knock came at the back door late that night. Soft, hesitant. I checked the camera. It was Lena, Ethan's fiancée. She looked pale, hollow, like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door just enough. "What do you want?" "I need to show you something," she whispered. "Please, I'm scared." I stepped aside. She clutched her phone like a life raft. She didn't look like the partner of a tech founder. She looked like someone who'd realized too late who she was living with. "Ethan isn't building an app. There is no company. There never was." "I know, but that doesn't explain the inspection." "It's worse." She pulled up a voice memo. "Ethan owes money. A lot. The people at the bar weren't investors. They were bookies. He's in for almost 90,000. My stomach dropped. That explained the desperation, the demand. "Listen," she said, pressing play. The audio crackled, but the voices were unmistakable. Ethan, frantic. "She won't sign, Dad. The inspection didn't scare her enough." Then my father's voice, calm, cold. "Then we break her." "We just need her signature on the initial partnership agreement," my father said on the recording. "Once she signs, the power of attorney clause on page 13 gives us liquidity rights." "And then?" Ethan asked. "Then we liquidate," my father replied without hesitation. "Sell the ovens, sell the mixers, sublease the space, strip it down. The bakery's worth at least 100 grand in assets. That clears your debt and leaves me a profit." "But that destroys her business," Ethan muttered. "She'll have nothing." "She's resilient," my father scoffed. "She's always been good at starting over. Besides, she's just a baker. She can get a job at a grocery store." The recording ended. The silence that followed felt thick enough to suffocate. I looked around my kitchen, the stainless steel counters, the proofing racks, the ovens I had chosen piece by piece. They weren't talking about money. They were planning to butcher my life's work and sell it for scrap to clean up Ethan's mess. And then it clicked. The golden child paradox. Ethan wasn't the producer. He wasn't the genius. He was a parasite. He created nothing. He only consumed. I was the host. I was the asset. The entire family narrative had been built to hide the truth that their golden child was empty and funded by the labor of the scapegoat. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked quietly. Lena swallowed. "Because I'm pregnant," she said, resting her hand on her stomach. "And I won't raise a child in a family that eats its own." She sent the file to my phone. "Do whatever you have to do," she whispered. "Burn it down." I told her, "Go stay with your sister tonight. Don't go back to Ethan." After she left, I played the recording again. "She's just a baker." I smiled at my reflection in the oven door. It was cold, unfamiliar. "You're right, Dad. I am a baker, and tomorrow I'm going to serve you exactly what you ordered." They arrived at 10 a.m. sharp the next morning. My father and Ethan, both smug, both carrying briefcases that looked more decorative than functional. They expected panic, desperation, a woman ready to sign anything. I unlocked the door and let them in. "You're early," I said flatly. "We wanted to resolve this quickly," my father said, sliding a thick stack of papers onto the counter. "The inspection was unfortunate, but with this partnership we can rebrand. Fresh start." Ethan was already eyeing the espresso machine like it had a price tag. "Sign here," he said, tapping the page. I picked up the pen and looked at them. A man who never paid a bill without complaining, a man who'd gambled away his future and tried to steal mine. "You're right," I said. "We need to handle this." I didn't sign. Instead, I pressed a button on my phone. The sound system crackled. Then Ethan's voice filled the bakery at full volume. "She won't sign, Dad. We strip it for parts. She's just a baker." The color drained from Ethan's face. My father froze mid-reach. The recording played every word, every plan, every insult. When it ended, the silence was absolute. "You recorded us," my father whispered. "Lena did," I corrected. I reached under the counter and placed the manila envelope on top of the papers. "This isn't a partnership agreement. Inside, you'll find two things: a restraining order barring both of you from within 500 feet of this bakery or my home, and a copy of the police report for the false health department tip." Ethan started to shake. "That's a misdemeanor," my father said weakly. "Filing a false report is," I agreed. "Conspiring to defraud a business owner using power of attorney is a felony." Ethan's breathing spiraled. "Caleb, please, we were just talking." "Save it for the judge," I said. "The police have the audio, the logs, everything." I opened the door. "Get out." They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. They ran. 1 month later, the bakery was full. Sunlight poured through the windows. The family table was gone. Every seat was open. I was boxing croissants when I noticed a $20 bill on the counter with a folded napkin beneath it. Written in blue ink were 5 words: "Integrity tastes better than anything." Beneath it was a check for $2,500, a tip from the city's most ruthless food critic. I looked around at my staff, laughing, working, building something real. This was my family, built from flour, discipline, and respect. I hadn't lost a family. I had gained my freedom. If this story resonated with you, like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share it with friends who need to hear it. And comment below with your perspective or the biggest lesson you took away.